So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. My name is Julia Madison, and I'll be the technical manager for this session on the INDDEX24 platform, chaired by the intake team. So thank you so much for taking part in ANH 2022. We look forward to a really robust and interactive session today. There's a small group of us, so hopefully we can have a lively conversation. And Winnie, over to you.
Thank you, Julia, for the welcome. And hi, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Since it's a relatively small group, we think it would be great if we could do a quick round of live introductions. So maybe Jenny, because I can see you because your camera is on. If you want to give the first introduction.
So hi, everybody. My name is Jenny Coates, and I'm on the faculty at the Freeman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy at Tufts University. And until, I guess, a couple of months ago, was the director of the INDEX project. The INDEX project was the kind of driving force behind the development of the INDDEX24 dietary assessment platform. And as I'm sure Winnie and Murad will explain in a few moments, we're now thrilled that the platform has been transitioned to reside under the auspices of Intake FHI Solutions. So very excited to hear the presentation and to participate today in whatever way would be useful.
So today we're going to be talking about INDDEX24 Dietary Assessment Platform. I am Winnie Bell, a senior technical advisor at Intake Center for Dietary Assessment, which is housed at FHI Solutions. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Murad Morsi, who's going to be sharing a demo of the INDDEX24 app and can introduce himself further at that time. And then also Megan Deichler, who is the director and due to an issue with internet and power isn't able to join us right now, unfortunately. So this is the line of our colleagues here at Intake Center for Dietary Assessment. Again, a couple of us are on the call today and a couple of us aren't, but wanted to share with you who we are. The plan for today is firstly just to provide a very brief overview of what Intake is, what the Center for Dietary Assessment is and does, and then to speak in more detail about the INDDEX24 Dietary Assessment Platform, provide a demonstration of the INDDEX24 mobile app, and take a pause at that point to answer any questions related to the app itself. And then I will be coming back online and providing some high-level comments on some of the benefits of using INDDEX24 based on studies that we've conducted, and also how you could become more involved or a user of the INDDEX24 Dietary Assessment Platform. And we'll be sure to reserve some time at the end for questions and discussion. So firstly, this Intake Center for Dietary Assessment, the main, our mission as an organization is to strengthen policies and programs that improve the nutritional status of individuals by increasing the availability, quality, comparability, and use of reliable dietary data and metrics. And we do this through a variety of means by engaging with various governments, researchers, and through the development of different tools and innovations and metrics. And the focus of this presentation and of this side event is really on dietary data specifically, and how individual level quantitative dietary data can be used, can be better collected using the INDDEX24 Dietary Assessment Platform. So dietary data itself, as you may be well aware, particularly after attending this conference for the last week and a couple of days, is a really critical input for many sectors, right? So from nutrition, health, for food safety, for agriculture, environmental and sustainability considerations, as well as for trade and the economy. But however, to date, these data haven't been routinely collected, particularly in low and middle income countries. And so part of the effort and the origin of INDDEX24 has really been to increase the availability, access, and use of individual level 24-hour recall data to enable better policies and interventions in these areas. And as Kofi Annan said, and you might be well familiar with this quote, that without good data, we're flying blind. If you can't see it, you can't solve it. And so this has very much been the case in many, many contexts. And so this is, we're excited to be here today to hopefully start closing some of that gap and joining many others in closing that gap. So I know Dr. Jennifer Coates introduced herself at the beginning, fortunately, but for those of you who have just joined, I want to acknowledge that the INDDEX24 Dietary Assessment Platform was developed at Tufts University at the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy under the guidance of Dr. Jennifer Coates between 2015 and 2022. At this stage, the platform is in the process of transitioning to Intake, which will become the future host to ensure sustainability and longevity for years to come, is the vision. And so without that, this is a screenshot from our webpage where I would encourage all of you to explore for further information about INDDEX24 and the other existing innovations and technologies that are available in Intake. And now I'm just going to launch right into the main portion of the presentation on INDDEX24 itself. Just wanted to frame, as we talk about dietary data and this particular tool, to put it in the broader context of food systems, right? So the presentations probably that you've been attending and that you'll be attending this week touch on all different parts of the food system. And where INDDEX24 really comes in is on the diet side of things. So increasing the collection of dietary data to better inform various aspects along the entire food system, within the entire food system. And as was just kind of mentioned previously, that we've seen limited routine collection of individual dietary data due to a range of challenges. And this has been, these are outlined here, but they even extend beyond this. One of the main things, though, has been historical underinvestment in this type of routine data collection. I think this has begun to change in recent years, but it has historically been an issue. In addition, there's been a lack of investment in the research infrastructure that's needed. And so with the efforts of INDDEX24 and with other similar projects, we've seen a big change in the research infrastructure itself in terms of enabling and allowing easier collection of dietary data. And then finally, just the technical and methodological challenges that come with collecting these types of data. So INDDEX24 was really conceived and designed starting back in 2015, again at Tufts University, with the ambition to overcome some of these critical challenges. And we really wanted to create a system that was designed to prevent the need to sort of reinvent the wheel with each new survey, and also to enable adaptability across varied contexts. We envisioned a system that would help standardize data collection according to best practices, and also streamline the data processing and analysis of the 24-hour recall data. Ultimately, the objective was to shorten the time and the cost required from preparation through usable data. And so, and I should also just interrupt myself here to say, I'm saying we because I was previously part of the team at Tufts University, working closely with Jenny Coates and B. Rogers, who's joined us on the development of INDDEX24. So just an overview of the system kind of as a whole before we get into the more detailed demo. Just want to highlight a couple components. So one of them is the Global Food Matters database, which you may have heard about. And this is designed to be a centralized, accessible repository of dietary reference data, including food composition databases, standard recipe information, food descriptors and probes, and portion conversion factors, all of which are necessary to convert the food consumption data that's been reported in a survey into the energy and nutrient equivalents. This Global Food Matters database links with the INDDEX24 mobile app. So the second component that we're going to have a detailed demo of today with Morad is the mobile app itself. And this is designed to be a quantitative 24-hour dietary recall, which uses the multiple pass method and can be administered on any Android device. It is designed to work offline and in up to 4 languages for a given survey, and is highly customizable within certain specifications. And then the third component are what we refer to as the analytical reports, which have been designed to link the food consumption data with the food composition information. and then also to calculate the daily food and nutrient intakes at the respondent level. So the kind of high-level view of the different components is here, and just, you know, for the Global Food Matters database itself, I would just say that, you know, in addition to what I just mentioned about it being centralized and open and accessible, it's been designed really to encourage as much data sharing as possible between users. And so once you have access to the site, which I'll explain in a moment how you can do that, you are able to download existing data that are in the Global Food Matters database, make adaptations, add your own data, and re-upload it to your own individual workspace. These, all of the foods, recipes, and ingredients can be translated and used in up to 4 languages for your own personal workspace purposes. And again, the data are seamlessly shared with the INDDEX24 mobile app. So this slide just has some more detailed information about the different components that are that can go into the Global Food Matters database. I won't get into it right now, but happy to discuss during the question discussion at any point. So if you are interested in checking out the Global Food Matters database, I would encourage you to visit this link, which is currently at Tufts University. And Morad, you might be able to drop it into the chat, which would be great so that people can sign up. When you go to this link, you'll be asked to just basically register your information. And within a couple of days, you'll receive an email from a colleague providing you some information to bypass a firewall, which will then allow you to create your own personal login and workspace within the Global Food Matters database. So as for the mobile app, which we're going to get into in a moment, I think I've pretty much covered all of this information, including that it's a multi-pass 24-hour recall system. It can be used in up to 4 languages. It works fully offline with all of the data collected able to be uploaded to the cloud with Wi-Fi connection. And it has really been designed to ensure kind of consistency and streamlining of information across interviews and throughout the survey process. And the method we follow adheres very closely, precisely to the quantitative multiple pass method. And so what Morad is going to demonstrate is this within the app, but just so you know where we're going, this, if you aren't already familiar with the 24-hour recall method, this includes a first pass where we collect a quick round of information on all foods and beverages consumed. In the second pass, we gather more detailed information on each food and beverage. In the third pass, we gather information on the portion estimation of the amount consumed. And then finally, a quick review of all foods. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Morad, who's going to introduce himself and share the demo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us in this side event. My name is Morad Morsi. I'm a senior technical advisor in Intake, and what I hope is that I know it's been a long week, a long day for some of you, but what I hope is that you'll judge that the next 15 minutes, the video that you'll watch, will be a very much worthwhile investment of your time, especially if you work in the area of that collection of 24-hour recall data. Before we do this, there's one question from Elena Martinez about what's the current geographical focus of the Global Food Matters database, and are there plans to expand it?
Thank you for both. I was saying, great question, Elena. Thanks for asking that. There isn't a single geographical focus within the Global Food Matters database. It is really, at this point, the data that exists in there has been driven by the users who have already used INDDEX24 or who are preparing for a study to use INDDEX24. We have data from several countries and some of these data are either in process, so may not be fully visible or available yet, and some of them are fully available, but we currently have data from Burkina Faso, Senegal, Nigeria, Vietnam, Cambodia. There's a West African, kind of comprehensive West African workspace. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few, but that's just kind of to give you a sense. And the reason that this is because the data that are in there, it's at this stage occurring organically in terms of, if you use INDDEX24, then you do need to use the Global Food Matters database. And so users will upload the files that are required in order to conduct the surveys. And I can, yeah.
Thanks, Winnie. And I'll remind everybody that there will be opportunities to ask, more of those questions after we show you the demo of the Index24. So please don't hesitate. Without further ado, I'm going to start a video here that I recorded earlier of me showing you the 24-hour recall, the Index24 mobile application. I'll pause the video at some points just to highlight a few things and explain a few things, but please don't hesitate to drop your questions as we move along. Hello everyone, my name is Morad Morsi and I'm a Senior Technical Advisor at Intake Center for Dietary Assessment. In this video, I'm going to be doing a quick demo of the Index24 mobile application that we're using to electronically collect 24-hour recall data. I've already gone ahead and registered a respondent. So this is why you see the modify respondent information option up there. I've done that just for the sake of time in order to really focus on the process of the 4 passes of the 24-hour recall itself. So what you're seeing here is a screen that presents for the moment just the first pass. The other passes do not appear until one has at least completed the first pass. So we're going to go right ahead and click here on first pass. What the enumerator will see is that they will see a series of instructions on the different screens. And what they will do is collect information about time of consumption for each eating occasion. And they will also collect a brief description of the foods, the mixed dishes, and the beverages that the person has consumed in the previous day from the moment they woke up until the moment they went to sleep. So this is basically the quick list and the first pass of the 24-hour recall. And they will also record the place of consumption for each eating occasion. So the first, as is typically done with when we do the quick list, it's broken down by eating occasion, and then we record the time for each of those eating occasion. What we're seeing here are 2-hour intervals. However, this is customizable. This can be changed so that it either displays itself in an exact time, or it can also be text-based to describe the periods of time. So I'm going to select here the first period, and we can then move ahead to doing the quick list. This is going to be the quick list for, let's assume, the first meal of the day. Let's assume also that this is breakfast, and I'm going to start basically entering here whatever the respondent is telling me. I'm just going to take 2 very quick examples. It's going to be apple and some juice for breakfast. And one would continue with that quick list until they've covered all of the items consumed at breakfast, and then they can proceed ahead to the next step by asking whether this was consumed at home or outside of home. If you select the option not home, then in place of consumption, you do have here options that you can choose from, and these options are customizable. I'm going to go back and just select home here, and then we proceed to the next step. The next step, what it does is have you 3 options down here. So the first option, which is the option go back, allows you to go back and add additional foods or beverages that have been consumed in the past 24 hours that the person may have remembered, after you finished the quick list. Here, this is the option for adding other eating occasions and other items to the quick list. And if you click on this option here, I'm finished with the quick list, it basically means that you're done with the first pass and you're ready to move to the second pass of the 24-hour recall. So what I'm going to do here is just click on add items to the quick list, and then it allows me here then to move to a next possible meal. So I'll select here the one between 12 and 2 for lunch. I'm going to write down here a standard recipe. Let's call it here jollof rice. Okay. There we go. So this is the quick list for, and then again, it's the same idea. Any other items that were consumed during lunch would get recorded here. And then we proceed to the next eating occasion the same way until we finish with the first pass. For the sake of time, I'm going to stop the first pass here. So I'm going to click here, going to select that this was also consumed at home, and then I'm going to click I'm finished with the quick list. There we go. When we're finished with the first pass, you see here on this screen, the second pass has appeared. So we're going to go and and click on it just to see what happens.
You'll see here the list of food items that have appeared with their eating occasions. And these boxes here are there to indicate you that the process is not complete. You have 4 boxes here that indicate each of the 4 passes, and it's showing you that which passes were complete and incomplete for each of the food items. I'm going to go in here, go to Apple. So we have here again, like we saw before, the instructions for the second pass. So we proceed ahead, and so once one starts typing here, and I'm going to start to type Apple, you can see here that there are foods appearing in the drop-down menu here, or this menu, and these foods are coming from the database that is in the software about which apples are available, which foods are available for this country. And we'll discuss at the end of this demo of where this is coming from. But I would right now want to focus on what we have here in the database.
I wanted to pause here very quickly to let you know that we've already discussed the Food Matters database. This is where the information that you see here comes from all of the information that's uploaded in the Food Matters database, and then that's pushed to the mobile application. So the mobile application, like it's a blank slate at the beginning. There's nothing there, and it gets all of its information from the FMDB. I'll resume the video.
So I'll just choose Apple to begin with here. And then if I click on the next arrow, it's going to start asking the probe questions. And again, these probe questions are coming from the database that's preloaded in the software. And I'll tell you more about it later. But at this point, all you need to know is that these probes are customizable according to the survey administrators. So you can define for each food what these descriptors could be, and therefore what the probing questions will be. So in this case, we're just going to go right ahead and select red, for instance, and then we click on the arrow to the next screen. It's asking again for a set of additional descriptors, questions that the enumerators would ask to the respondent. And of course, at any point in time, the respondent always can say, I don't know, and then you can proceed with other probing questions. There we go. So this is the description of the food item in the database. And then a question about where this item was procured from.
Hi everybody, Murad again here. I paused the video just to let you know that this question about the procurement of the ingredients or the food items, or where people got their food from, this is a customizable question that can either be turned on or turned off in the application. So if you have, if you have an interest in that question, you can include it. If not, you can, turn it off so you can proceed ahead without it.
So let's say here from the market, and then the person can always enter any comments, specific comments about that specific food for any reason if they feel like they need to do so. That's it. Now save and submit. And so when we go back to that screen, it shows here, there we go, that the second recall has been completed for this food item. So then we can go to juice, and we'll proceed in the same way. If for any reason the item is not available in the database, you can always check this box if the item is not in the food list, and the application will allow you to enter the food item manually, and type in the name of the food, and we'll also follow up with some predefined questions that are also under the control of the survey administrators to try as much as possible to get the most complete information about a food item. In this case, I'll start typing in juice, see what we have available in the database here. So this is where you have all of these different juices. So let's say in this case, as we ask, so we can either leave it as juice. You can choose juice from here, or if you already have more information, you can choose, for instance, canned mango juice. But in this case, let's go again with the probing question. It's going to select juice. It's going to appear here what kind of juice it is. I'll just select mango. Was it fresh or canned? So I select canned. Let's say it was with added sugar. So the respondent may not know about that. In this case, absolutely fine to say I don't know. And then these are the brands of canned mango juice available in the country. Again, under flexible, customizable, you can change those according to the country. And let's go for Bravo here, and that's it. So that completes the description of that food item. Again, where was it consumed? Let's say, where was it procured from? Let's go for the market again here, and that's it. That completes the question of the mango juice. As we've seen before, as we return to the screen, you see now that the second pass has been completed for those two food items here, the apple and the mango juice. And so now we'll go for the jollof rice. This is our standard recipe, and we're going to go and try to find it in the database. So I'm going to try to type in jollof here, and as you can see, it appears here with in the database with rice or fragmented rice. So I'll select the first one, and so as you can see here, there are specific questions about, when one selects a standard recipe, they still ask all of to the respondent to list the ingredients of the recipe to the best extent possible, and they check, as they mentioned, the ingredients, whether those are the list of ingredients of the standard recipe are mentioned by the respondent or not. And then they confirm yes. Well, not all of them, of course, have to be mentioned, but if they are included, then they can say yes, and if not, they can always check this box here if the recipe does not correspond to the list of ingredients here. Like, for instance, if the person has added some, nutritious foods that are not part of the standard recipe, in this case, it's important to capture it. So then they would say no, and then there would be like a whole other thing that happens for non-standard recipes. In this example, we'll just stick to the standard recipe, which is going to select yes. Again, asking where the ingredients were procured from. And so let's say in this case, it's going to be like somewhere from friends and family. And again, any comments if you want on this. And this means here that you've completed the second pass for all of the food items. And when you complete the second pass for all of the food items, it tells you here that you're ready to proceed to the third pass. So we've seen the screen that tells us we're ready to proceed to the third pass. So it brings us back to that screen, and all we have to do is just click on the arrow here. It brings us back to this main menu where we can now select the third pass, which, as we all know, is all about quantities. So we start with the apple again, and we proceed ahead with the instructions. Those two portion size estimation methods that you see here, they also come from the database that's preloaded in the mobile application. And again, I'll tell you more about that towards the end. But in this case, we have two portion size estimation methods available, direct weight or proxy weight using Play-Doh. I'll just choose Play-Doh here. It takes us to a screen where we can enter the amount of Play-Doh that's weighed on the electronic scale. So let's say in this case, it weighed 86 grams. And then we ask the person if they had one or several apples of that type. And if they say it's one, then you don't have to do anything. You just can proceed to the next step. One is entered by default as the number of apple units consumed. But if for any reason they had 2 or 3, that information can be recorded in that field down here. We can enter 2. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it as, just the apple, and then proceed ahead. And that's it. A summary of, what we've just entered. The same thing is going to happen to mango juice. In this case, the measurement methods that's available is direct weight. So we're going to enter the amount in grams. So let's say 253. How many, portions, like glasses or cans or whatever of those that you have. Again, I'm going to leave it as the default as 1 and save and submit. And then the last one I'm going to choose here, it's the jollof rice, where we can use either photos, proxy weight with sorghum, or proxy weight using water. So I'm going to just choose a proxy weight using sorghum and enter the amount of sorghum that was weighed on the electronic scale. This is something that's collected on the field with the respondent. So let's say they weighed 368 grams of sorghum. The person has had, just a serving. So again, we're going to leave it here empty. If they had more than one serving, you can enter here 2 or 3 serving of that amount. So that's always a possibility. And then we proceed ahead to the next step, a quick summary, and then save or submit. We've completed the third pass for all of our food items. It means that we're ready to proceed now to the fourth pass. So the fourth pass is the final one. It's meant to be like a revision and a confirmation of everything that the person has consumed. So you will also, if you have made the links with the in the Food Matters database, I'll talk more about that later. With the composition of the foods, you can also review for those foods for which you already have that information, the caloric intake from the foods that was estimated for that person. So that's exactly what's appearing here. It's basically estimated total caloric intake for the respondent so far is 832. That is in most cases going to be like an underestimation because again, like I told you, if not all foods necessarily are linked already to like a composition data at that point. And also if anybody enters foods that were not in the database, obviously you will not have information for that. So here we can basically confirm the number of portions and the food. So we'll confirm, and we can confirm here also these are the items that were consumed for breakfast, and then we can also confirm the amounts consumed for lunch. There we go. And then there are a series of questions that are asked at the end of the recall just to help with the interpretation of the data. We asked the respondent whether that day was a special day or just like a normal day. So let's say it's none of the above here. We ask about the level of appetite, more than usual, usual, or less than usual, or don't know. So select usual here. And also a question about taking any dietary supplements, yes or no. I'm just going to select no here. And then you always have the possibility, the enumerator always has the possibility to enter any comments that they may have about this interview, like if something went wrong or they suspect that something was missing, whatever, anything can be just noted here for them and for the supervisors and for the survey administrators to basically make a determination about this recall in general. That's it. And so we save and submit, and this means here that the recall was completed. And with that, I thank you very much for watching this demo. Bye.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We can, I'm going to start going over the questions that you already were submitted in the chat.
I think there's one that Emma asked that I haven't responded to yet. So one from Emma was, what would you do in the case of mango juice if the person did not know the weight of juice that they had?
Absolutely, yes. So this, the database that you choose, if you think that the conversion factor that's whatever you have right now is not working for you, or you've seen something that you think is not going to work in your country, remember that you are in control of which measurement methods, portion size estimation methods that you want to use for that food in the FMDB database. So if you think, for instance, that in the context of your study, it's better to use another, let's say, proxy weight using maybe sorghum, or we want to use a standard cans or something like that, you have full control over those portion size estimation methods and the conversion factors that you can include in the FMDB and then push to the mobile application, and then the mobile application is fully customized with how you think you should estimate the quantities in the context you're working in.
Great, thanks for that. Are there any other questions related specifically to the demo? Then I'm going to move along to just a few slides highlighting some of the benefits of using INDDEX24, and then talking about how you can become a user of INDDEX24, and then making sure that we reserve hopefully about 10 minutes for discussion and more questions at the end. So while INDDEX24 was under development at Tufts University, we conducted a series of feasibility, validation, and cost studies, both with the National Institute of Nutrition in Vietnam and with the Institut National de la Statistique et de la Démographie in Burkina Faso. So the results from these studies have been published recently and are available open access, and we'd encourage you, if you want to read some of the details, to check these papers out. But just at a very high level, kind of the takeaway findings were that we found through these studies that INDDEX24 costs less than using pen and paper at the respondent level. So that's a positive takeaway. We also found that there are further cost and time savings if leveraging the existing dietary reference data in the Global Food Matters database. And so some of this was done, this was done through modeling different scenarios of looking at users who had to either develop all of their own dietary reference data or could borrow the existing data from workspaces that and from researchers who had already conducted 24-hour recalls. So again, as we anticipate that the dietary reference data in the Global Food Matters database continues to expand, we foresee that there will just be ongoing and incremental cost and time savings with each additional, as those databases grow. We also found lower respondent burden. So in general, the average time of the interview with INDDEX24 when compared to pen and paper was either the same or faster with the mobile app. And so one of the questions that had come up in the chat was how long the interviews take. It really depends, but it typically somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes. We did see interviews that were only 20 minutes long. We did see interviews that were 50 minutes or 1 hour long. But the variability comes in depending on the complexity of the diet, how much was consumed, and then especially on things like if you don't have a database that's complete or a database with lots of standard recipes and you're having to rely on collecting recipe-specific information from each respondent, then that can really increase the time. And then we also found overall less time required from the start of the survey through data that could be used for analyses and publication and policy purposes. Our validation study results, which I haven't shown here, but really highlight that the data quality, the accuracy of results are as good as, and in several cases better than, the pen and paper 24-hour recalls. And this was exactly aligned with our our hypotheses, because we didn't change the method really at all. We did improve the standardization of it by putting it in the app, but it really remains a 24-hour recall at heart. And then we also found an improved and positive feedback from the user perspective. So both enumerators and respondents in both contexts really preferred INDDEX24 over the pen and paper 24-hour recall. So as far as next steps, and if you're interested in becoming a user, there are a couple things. So one is that, as we shared the link before, we'd encourage everybody in this session to request access to the Global Food Matters database. As I had mentioned, you'll receive an email from my colleague with details about how to bypass the firewall. If you're Googling the Global Food Matters database right now, you won't see it online because it is behind this firewall. Anyway, once you have that email in hand, you will be able to access it and explore the data that are in there, create a workspace, copy existing data, and upload anything existing data that you have that might be of interest. For accessing the INDDEX24 mobile app, so this is available through Intake at this stage and does require a kind of subscription to access it. We have a tiered pricing scheme in place, which is based on the institution conducting the survey. So if you're with a government agency or a university or nonprofit or private industry, each of those fall into a different pricing category. And then also depending on the sample size. So that's another aspect that will drive the price. If you're interested in talking about using INDDEX24, please reach out, and happy to discuss what that would look like. The INDDEX24 itself comes with, access to the app comes with 2.5 days of technical assistance from Intake Center for Dietary Assessment, and those days can be used really in any way that you want. So if it's, sample size calculations, or if it's working specifically on the app, that's all up for offer. And then access to the app also comes with use of CommCare, of course, but also detailed guidance materials, training materials for supervisor and enumerator training, as well as just a whole kind of wealth of resources that we've pulled together over the years to enable this, enable these types of surveys to take place. So one thing I did want to mention, which also came up sort of briefly in the chat, was regarding the level of effort needed. And I think the question that came up in the chat was specifically about from an enumerator perspective. But I do just want to highlight that INDDEX24 is not, you can't just download it from the Play Store and plug in the data from the Global Food Matters database and go to the field the next day. It does require some time and preparation. And it really, the level of time and effort required does depend on the context, does depend on the type of study, and on any, whether there are already existing data in the Global Food Matters database that you can build on or use immediately. If there are data, what we found for, countries where there are data and where the app has already been translated, you could basically within a couple of months or less probably be ready to get to the field to collect your 24-hour recall data. In cases where you're really starting from scratch, developing the database for the Global Food Matters database and pushing that to the app, and if you have to do translations into several languages, then we would encourage a much longer runway of time, around 6 months or longer, depending on the size and complexity of the study. So again, these are all things that if you're interested, we would love it to discuss in more detail and would encourage you to reach out to us. So a couple of sort of quick next steps and opportunities. One is that on Thursday, we're going to have an open hour just session hosted by Intake, where we'd invite you to come and join to discuss INDDEX24, questions related to Index and 24-hour recalls, dietary assessment. And you can sign up through our website. And I think Morad or myself in a moment will also drop a link in the chat for you to sign up through the Zoom platform. Again, our email address is here, so please feel free to reach out with any questions. And then the link again for the Global Food Matters database. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions and discussion. And we have about, let's say, 10 minutes.
So one question that I'll take, Winnie, is from Yetunde. He was asking, can food models be used when weights and quantities cannot be described by the respondent? So the answer to the question is yes. You can use, so again, in the Food Matters database, you can define what is the portion size estimation method that you want to use for this food. So for instance, you saw for jollof rice, we had the example of photos, but it can also be like models that the enumerators are carrying with them, and then you would set up the application so that whatever model number that they choose, this is the one that's being indicated in the application.
Great, thank you, and thanks, Jenny. I also see you've responded to some questions, so much appreciated. And just to reiterate one of Jenny's point, which I also tried to make regarding, if you're building off of an existing database, the time required could be as quick as 1 to 2 months. If there's data that are already there, and if the app has already been translated into the language and the context for that country, it's really we've seen it, for example, in Vietnam recently, to be a pretty seamless process. If you are starting from scratch, it's a different story. Jenny, you have your hand up.
That was the point I was going to make, which is just that, if you're reusing, it's one thing it definitely shortens the time if there's already data available in the Food Matters database. When you're using the app for the first time and getting it set up, still requires some time. But if you've used it already for a survey and you've done the whole setup process for your context, and then you're going back and repeating a survey in the same country, I think you'll find that the process will be much, much, much faster, because you basically have an app that you've already developed that's ready to go.
Great, good question, Ramya. Again, Morad, do you want to respond to that one?
So I just want to say something to Winnie, because she just typed something in the chat. So she said that she didn't realize that the app is open source and free. So the thing that is free is the Global Food Matters database. So you can use that free of charge, and you can basically upload or use existing databases that other people have used in other surveys in that space. It's really, the Global Food Matters database is really meant to be a repository where people working like on dietary assessment surveys can put in there all of those like super important databases that are needed to make a successful 24-hour recall, like the conversion factors, like the recipes, like the food composition data. And that typically in the past were like kind of like gray literature that kind of you didn't have access to it. So what we're trying to do here, as we said, is that we are really trying to make this thing available so you can stand on the shoulders of others who have done this work before you, and you can reach better and better heights and further improve the process and save time. So that's the Global Food Matters database, open to everyone. You can for free. However, the INDDEX24 mobile application itself is not free. This is something that you will need to contact us so that we can figure out, depending on the kind of survey, the institution you're working with, what is the pricing scheme that you basically would fall under. And I also wanted to let you know that, and this is so as the INDDEX24 system has transitioned from Tufts to FHI Solutions, so the pricing scheme has changed. And one very important point I wanted to make is that in FHI Solutions and Intake, we're not trying to transform this into a business. We are trying to cover our costs so that this becomes something sustainable on the very long term that the nutrition community can count on. And so this is why we have to charge for the product, so that it basically becomes a sustainable product.
Thanks for responding to that, Mara. That's what I was asking you if you could respond to that. So it was perfect. Great. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions or clarifications.
There was one question that you wanted to get back to Ramya on, or did you already have the opportunity to do so?
Oh, so I haven't, but I see that Jenny responded with some thoughts, and then also pointing her towards data for diets. But Ramya, feel free, if that doesn't respond to your question, let us know either right now or by email, and happy to discuss further.
I'm just, I see she's, I'm just reading what Jenny has written. I'm just kind of curious how there is a lot of, there's so many indicators, I can't even keep track, and they're validating a lot. And then how does the quantifying dietary data fit with that? And I'm just kind of curious, just from each of your experience or perspective. I come from a quantitative dietary tool, and I do think it could be easily used and analyzed, and it's a lot more valuable than indicators. So I'm just kind of curious from your experience, as we're saying, food system transformation, we're not really still measuring diets.
Yeah, great question, and I think a very thoughtful point. Jenny, since you are deeply engaged in this, do you want to respond in part to it, and then?
Yeah, it is a really good question. It's true. Yes, there are a plethora of indicators that are trying to kind of capture, elements of diet quality in a quicker, easier way that will primarily, I think, be useful for purposes such as global monitoring. So monitoring at the national level or monitoring at a global level, to enable countries to understand, at a glance, what kinds of things are changing within their food systems. That said, those indicators themselves are not likely to be sufficient for, really deep understanding, and either kind of understanding what's happening at a subgroup level of the population, or really unpacking, issues related to adequacy of the foods consumed, because most of those indicators aren't quantified. And so this work that I think hopefully everyone will be hearing more about pretty soon, that's being undertaken jointly by WHO and UNICEF and FAO, operating through TEAM, which is the Technical Advisory Group for Nutrition Monitoring. One of the objectives of this work is to really try to provide clear guidance to countries and other researchers for the types of tools, methods, and indicators that are best suited for different types of purposes, and also to help everybody work through, what does a diet monitoring system look like, right? So it might mean that you collect, using a very simple screener, some information on a very broad level about what people are, what food groups people are consuming. And you might have that snapshot annually, but then, every 5 years, you need to conduct a national survey that's conducting 24-hour recalls that can yield a lot more useful information, perhaps. So that's the kind of thing that they're starting to work on right now. And I think there's been a lot of demand for the kind of guidance you're mentioning. And so it's coming, but it's and I think, within the next 6 months to a year, we'll see a lot of progress on that front.
Yeah. Thanks for that response, Jenny. And I think it's a great question for all of us to be thinking about. And I'll just put it out there that, Intake has also been working on the Global Dietary Quality Score, which you're probably familiar with, and there is also an app for. And so I think the question you raised is one that's coming up a lot. So Jenny, the guidance you noted will be very helpful when it's available. So I see Julia, and I know we're at the end of our time. I don't know if anybody, Morad, if you want to say anything else before we say goodbye.
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for attending. I know this is, been a long week, a long day for some of you, and thank you very much for the questions and for the engagement. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.